Yo, what's going on? My name is Tim Nicholas, and welcome to another episode of Tim and Tam Talks. I am with my lovely co-host.
Tam, what's up, y'all?
What's up, Tam? Happy Monday to you. How you doing, sis?
It's been a phenomenal Monday. I'm happy. I'm happy. How you doing today?
I'm blessed. As you came on and said, I'm blessed and highly favored. So one of the more classic ways of just saying, hey, it's been a great day. It's been busy, super busy. I have not sat down yet up until this point. So I am looking forward to tonight's conversation. How about you?
Me too. Look, if you guys are watching right now, if you could, if you're new here, go ahead and click follow. If you're on YouTube, click subscribe and share this content because we're going to have a really good conversation. Today's topic, Tim, was church parents. And I'm a little nervous. Hopefully, my mama and them not watching. I don't know. I don't know. But I'm gonna share this as well. I'm gonna
Well,
share
I
this
hope
as
you
well.
are
So hopefully you guys y'all get some popcorn and get comfortable.
definitely. I hope that after this conversation, you are still invited to the family barbecue.
We'll see. I'll keep you posted.
All right. Well, Miss Tam, why don't you go ahead and dive in? So, what's been your thoughts about tonight's topic per se with church parents and church kids? Because I guess kind of a premise on what we start off with. So here at Tim and Tam Talks on Mondays at 7:30 Central, 8:30 Eastern. We like to talk about different things regarding church trauma, church things that the way we were raised, how we grew up, and it's really been tied into a series called The Church Boy with Childhood Trauma. So what Tam and I did back in November is that we collaborated on this first series, this first part, and as a result, really felt the connection to go farther by serving God's people and ministering to God's people and doing that in a way to where we can base it off of our own experiences. And so, we have lived a life of struggle, but we also have looking at two people who have been through the fire, but you would have never known just based on, our conversations and the things that we have shared with you guys throughout the course of these past 5 weeks. And so it's just been a blessing to be, doing this with you, Tam. We definitely have talked about, the church boy with childhood trauma, which I've been like the cause of, a lot of issues and things like that from a man's point of view, but also the effect from a woman's point of view too on how a church boy with childhood trauma can affect a woman. Is it better to even date the gangster who or the G out there or the player better than the church boy with childhood trauma? So we talked through so many things. And so tonight it's really about church parents and church kids. So Tam, go ahead and dive in. What's good?
I mean, that was a heavy intro, and I still don't know where to start. But I think it's a good reminder that although we can interpersonally have our own childhood trauma, we forget that our parents may have had trauma as well, right? And they expose us to the church, hoping that we'll have some sense of foundation, some sense of direction. But I think a lot of parents forget the output if they are not living up to what they are exposing us to. And, one of the things that I think I personally want to talk about today is, just my personal experience. And just from a highlight, I'm gonna do a highlight reel because I ain't gonna give y'all all my parents, dirty draws now. But from a
Oh man.
highlight, a highlight reel, we talked about growing up in the church, and for me, I got exposure to church with both my mom and dad. As a kid, my parents they never went to the same church, which it sounds very weird, but they just made it work. And I know a lot of people beef like about churches and stuff like that. But my dad grew up going to a mostly non-denominational church. It was a mostly white church. It was a white church. I ain't gonna say mostly. It was a white church. And my mom, she grew up in Pentecostal Holiness Church. And the churches that they grew up in, they continued to stay in as they got older. So my exposure to church parents was, one, I was going to a holiness church with my mom where they speak in tongues and they shout and they run up and down the aisle and they put some newspaper down and they spit up and do all that kind of stuff. And then I go to, my dad's church, and his exposure to churches, they raise their hands like this, and it's a Father God, and it's completely different, and nobody's speaking in tongues in the middle of service, and nobody's running up and down, the aisle. It's very decent in order, and I commend my parents for the exposure of being church parents, because I know a lot of people don't have that exposure, right? A lot of people didn't grow up in the church. We like to think that everybody grew up in the church. I think back in the day, maybe that was a commonality that we all had, but today, not everybody grows up in the church. Today, we have different ideologies. A lot of people think it's the white man God. A lot of people have different variations of being a Hebraelite and being the chosen one. And there's so many different beliefs, but I want to start my conversation by thanking my parents for giving me foundational exposure to the church, although they were different, but I still got them. And it's what has carried me on, right? So I want to start there. Now, secondly, the church parent that I got inside the four walls of the church and at house are two different people. Okay. So Sister Watts that I got, that was at the Holiness Church was not Sister Watts at home, so I had to, and I think it's very important for anybody. And I want to say that we often think leadership is responsible for souls. They're responsible with telling you the right way and leading the flock by example. But as church parents, we are also equally responsible for leading the flock and leading by example when it comes to our kids. Because if we expose them to God and show them a form of ungodliness, what are we really presenting to them? And right. My mom could cuss like a sailor. Okay, Tim, she can get with the best of them. My mom could cuss like a sailor. My mom, she was one of those, like, you're not gonna disrespect me. I'll take you out of this world before you talk back. She was one of those kind of moms. And as I get older, I realize, Mama, I think I was abused now. As I get older and I go to therapy and I start to unpack, my mother, who was very in the church, going to church Tuesdays, Thursdays, Saturdays, and Sundays, very committed to going to church. But I sometimes think the exposure to my church parent was based on indoctrination and not relationship. And once I look at it with fresh eyes now, I sit and I have conversations with both my mom and my dad around their personal walk and how their personal walk kind of gave me some different idiosyncrasies in terms of like what my walk should look like, because I got two different versions of them. And in seeing them, it's not to shame my parents, because we're all human, right? We all make mistakes, and my kids get older, I'm pretty sure they're gonna have a separate conversation with me. But it's important to understand, as church parents, not only do we have to, train a child in the way that they should go, we have to be prime examples of that way. So I'm gonna pause there, Tim, and let you kind of segue into church parents.
You definitely said a lot of things that you hit on, especially with your experience with having, your mom and your dad have two different spiritual backgrounds. When you talk about your dad growing up in a predominantly white church, and you have your mom growing up in a predominantly Black Pentecostal type church. So it's a culture shock for you either which way. When you look at it, you go into one church, you're like, do I fit in here, or do I go over here? Even though people look like me, is this what I'm supposed to be doing? Because it brings some type of like a cultural awareness to you. It still could have left you in a place of not knowing your identity in Christ within yourself, how you should conduct yourself. And so I can see where that could be damaging to some effect. The one thing I will say about even growing up in the church, um, with two parents, my parents were actively involved in church. We went to a Baptist church in Maryland, and got a lot of. I will first say when it comes to just my church parents, when it comes to my parents being in the church, and I'll speak specifically first for my mother, was that once she gave her life to Christ, and she, prior to giving her life to Christ, yeah, my mom was kind of wild, you know, and so she, once she got into the church, she was very intentional about living a life and walking that walk that um, to really build that relationship with God. And because I saw that in my mother, and I saw that she was striving to be different, she wasn't yelling as much, she wasn't cursing as much, drinking as much, or partying and doing all those things that, shoot, I've done it, as a, being a parent and stuff like that. So, um, she was doing those things, but then you could tell that her lifestyle had changed completely. And I would even say, and I'm very proud of my mother for that, because it gave me such a great spiritual foundation for how I walk today. How I pray today, how I read my Bible daily, how I abide with God and His Spirit and the Holy Spirit each and every day throughout the day. And I don't, I want an account from God each and every day that, well done, not good and faithful servant. I want that type of thing going on. Was there residue that I had to experience when, even though mom was walking right, did mom every now and again show that, hey, I'm a Christian woman, but I'm a woman first? She did. Were there moments where she stepped out of character that didn't necessarily look like God? Yes, absolutely. Some of it, a lot of it was provoked being a child to a parent and things like that. But then some of that also was the residue of just previous traumas that she had experienced, you know? And think about it from this aspect. Our parents would probably tell us that the trauma that they faced was way different, way more harsh, way crazier than any type of trauma that we will ever experience. To some degree, that could be true. We didn't have to deal with racism and segregation to the levels that they had to deal with. Okay, and so who knows how we would have handled that. That's why God didn't put us in that era, because it probably wasn't meant for us to experience, right? So from that aspect, you say, okay, you can kind of see Mama didn't have all her marbles because of things that she had endured, things she probably will never speak of to us as kids, to parents and all that she'll probably never speak of. And while it doesn't excuse the behavior, but you can understand the mindset as well. So it goes both ways. Was there pain? Yes. It's times when I remember not talking to mom for a whole 3 days, 2, 3 days in the silent treatment. And then seeing that made me feel as though, okay, to get my anger across or to get my frustration across, I'm going to not speak to you all day around the house. And so, do you pick up negative traits? You do, but it's also your job to change it, and that's where I've had to, over the years, give my mom a lot of grace, but also understanding. Yes, there was some things that could have gone better, could have been different, but at the same time, it's like, here we are. We can still say, hey, we can still be cool and say, okay, we made it through this. Then it's just another opportunity for growth. So,
Amen to that. You know what? I had a question, and this might vary or kind of deviate away from the topic. If it do, you just ignore me. But how do you how do you honor? Because we have to honor our parents being believers. How do you honor
mhm.
your parent when they are abusive? what does that look like? What does honor look like to you, Tim? What does that look like?
I can answer that pretty pretty swiftly. My father was abusive towards me, and but I'm still a man. I'm still a very strong man who didn't pass on those same traits to my children. So for that, that's a blessing because you could when you deal with trauma and have trauma, you could go one of two ways. You can become like that person, or you can rise above the experiences that that person put you through. And I've always been intentional about that when it comes to the relationship I have with my father. While it's non-existent to this point, the way I honor my father, even though we may not have a physical relationship or a consistent relationship, is the way I treat my children each and every day as their father. So me honoring my father and my mother for that matter is being the best parent that I can be, no matter where you are in this world, no matter where we are in our relationship, no matter, what's going on. The way that I can honor mom and dad at all times is not by not smearing their name, by still being the best example of who I can be and the best version of myself that I can be. And that's honoring them. That's we tend to think honor and relationship have to be hand in hand, so I'm honoring my mother and father by the relationship that I have. No, it I honor them by forgiving them. I honor them by understanding that they made some mistakes, just like we as parents have made mistakes too. And like you said about your kids, they're gonna have a conversation with you, just like how we've attempted to have conversations with our parents. Because we grew up in an era where like you said, you express yourself. That's those are like fighting words to parents in our era. Now there's gentle parents and stuff. Hey, I can say I'm a gentle parent,
Yeah.
for the most part. And so it's different, but we honor our parents, our mother and our father, by staying true to ourselves, staying true with our relationship with God, letting the world see that how you taught us, how you trained us, even though you have flaws, but you and I are great people, right?
I like to
So
think
we're
so.
great. Yeah, we are. We're great people. We love God, we love people, we love our families, we take care of our families, we work hard, great jobs, great opportunities. We still got to give our parents credit for that, for the
Uh-huh.
people that we are, and we have to give them credit, because they did mold us, and the experiences even that they put us through molded us and shaped us into the great people that we are. Some of it is because of them, and some of it is despite them. But
Uh-huh.
even despite them, we still love them.
I like the couple points that you mentioned. The first part is we try to express ourselves ourselves to our parents. I feel like that's one of the things that I'm still trying to do, if I'm being honest with you. Because, like you said, my parents grew up in a different generation where, you don't ask your parents why. Like, that's not even something that we were capable of asking. It was more like because I said so. And you say something else, you're gonna be on picking yourself up off the floor, one of those kind of things. So, I'm still challenged with, having more transparent conversations with my church parents, and being able to maintain the honor piece despite those difficulties in communication, and then just really unpacking what does honor mean, because I want to say everybody has um, a different definition of what honoring your parent means. Some people think honoring your parent means that your parents can abuse you and disrespect you and call you out your name and steal from you and treat you really bad, but you got to forgive them, and oh, that's your parents and those are the only ones you got. You will hear that often. I don't know about any other community, but I definitely know I hear it, in my community. And, I want to dismantle that, Tim, because a lot of it, people tie in honor and make it mean that you are capable of being disrespected by somebody that brought you into this world, right? And because of that, then they have the ability to do whatever, treat you like whatever, and that's honoring God. And that's not my belief. Like, to your point, I do believe that honoring my parents is basically living for God. That's honoring my parents. It's being able to stand. It's not disrespecting my parents. It's if my parents decide they're abusive, and I disconnect from that abuse, that's not dishonoring your parent. Like, and I really want to like dismantle any belief that says otherwise, because a lot of people are held hostage to abusive parents, and sometimes it's tied to our faith. Those parents will use that scripture to continually abuse their kid. And I just, my heart goes out for anyone who experiences abuse, from their parents, and they're thinking that they have to, they can't unplug, they can't disconnect. And I just want to reaffirm and throw out that thinking and let you know, hey, you don't have to stay in an abusive situation with your parents, and with the mindset of that's the way it has to be in order to honor God. That's not true. But also in honoring your parents, being able to, like Tim said, being able to live up to that name that they gave you, you know, and being able to use the good things that they may have instilled in you and progress through life that way.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree with everything you said, Tim. And especially when you're talking about this dismantling of the belief that honor should be tied to abuse of any kind. While that is a relationship that you have with your mother and your father, if you're out there listening, it's still a relationship first. So what I mean by that is you still treat it like any other relationship that you have built in your life. Mom and dad are on the same playing field as your best friend, as your girlfriend, boyfriend, your husband, your wife. It's on the same level, with the exception of husband and wife. That dismantling marriage is not anything biblical, or even something unless through abuse or some type of adultery or things like that. But when you're talking about that relationship with your parents, if it's a toxic relationship, you're gonna have to disconnect from that relationship for a short period of time, a long period of time, until God says so. You still need to make sure that from an emotional, physical, and spiritual aspect, you're still taking care of yourself. And if that relationship with your mother or your father is doing more harm than good on your health, on your mental health, how you operate because you're just so stressed out about the relationship itself, then you have to treat it as if it's a relationship that's toxic, and you have to separate the emotions and the feelings from what's actually real, which are all the circumstances around you. So I just want to second that with Tam is definitely to make sure that you dismantle the relationship and not feel like your honor is dismantled. It's just not. So that's a huge point that I would definitely want people to take away as well. Um, and honor does come in so many ways, shapes, or forms, and a lot of it, it's based on living for God, but also, you know, just how do you conduct yourself? That's my biggest thing that I keep going back to. But you can still, I feel like even in challenging moments with our parents, we have to remember, you know, honoring them and still giving them the respect that they're due, even when, even when you feel like they treat you wrong. That is a very tough and humbling thing to do, but that's what honor calls for. I can easily say that I have not always followed that model when it comes to my mother and father. But even when it hurts, you still have to be respectful. Even when you feel like you deserve to go off on your mama or daddy based on what they said, based on the fact that you ain't a child. I ain't a child no more. You know, I'm a grown man, I'm a grown woman or whatever. But at the same time, they did bring you into the world, and so the honor still needs to be there even when it hurts. But honoring them still means that you go, even if it's toxic, you still walk away, but you still walk away with your dignity intact because you still honored your parents, even in a difficult moment. That's my
I agree. So don't let anybody hold you hostage to abuse, even your parents. Even your parent, because people struggle. I want to keep saying that because people struggle with it. They struggle with family. It's hard. It's, they'll cut everybody off, but when it comes to their parents, it's like, oh, but they, it's my parents. So that's just who they are. You make excuses for it when it comes to your parents sometimes, and I just want to embolden the viewer, you guys. I just want to embolden you guys to, be able to create those spiritual, mental boundaries, and like Tim said, like even when your parents do kind of put you in challenging situations, because we're gonna put our parents in challenging situations. They're gonna put us in some challenging situations, but we can honor them as well. Like one of the things I've never cussed out my parents. I ain't never thought to cuss out my parents. I want to live, Tim. I want to live.
yeah. I feel you on that. I don't think I've cursed them out, but I definitely have yelled, and never it's never a good
so, so yeah. So I'm gonna segue to another question for you, Tim. So obviously now you've become a church parent.
feeling. I knew you was coming with this. I knew it.
You
I
become
knew it.
that church parent. So what are the some of the things that maybe your church parent has exposed you to that you will continually walk in, maybe something that you've decided that you're going to step away from as a church parent in order to kind of instill those godly beliefs into your kids?
Um, some of the things that I will continue to instill in my kids as a church goer, as a parent, a believer, definitely praying every day. Definitely instilling prayer when you wake up in the morning, prayer when you go to sleep at night. Of course, prayer, like true prayer when you are saying grace, those types of things. Just personalizing your prayers with God. So I'm definitely want to keep that going when it comes to really building that and instilling that into each of my children. As if you get them started young, train up a child in the way they should go, for they shall not depart from it. And so if I'm trying to build them up in that way spiritually, giving them, prayers, giving, and then my wife and I, we've given them like journals to write in so that they can express themselves in a very productive way, and we can actually read it. They want us to read it to so that they can express themselves. Um, and that's one thing, to be able to we can express ourselves to God in any He wants us to come to us any way because He already knows how we feel. So I want to be able to open that pipeline up for my children to know that they can come to us and tell us how they feel. And it could be the worst thing in the world on how you feel, but at least we know, you know.
Hmm.
So opening up that communication, I would say also, reading the Bible, but also trying to study it and understand it so that when you have to make choice A or choice B, you in a fork in the road, where you gonna go, you have some type of spiritual backing on how to make right decisions and the right choice. And these are things that, I was taught at a young age, didn't always implement it, but now it's, of course, being a kid and being hard headed and all those things that we tend to do. But I want to be able to instill that into there a lot. Um, some things I probably would want to stay away from. The hardest, I mean, listen, I know the Bible says like spare the rod, spoil the child, and things like that, but it's hard. I would say like discipline is how to discipline is huge, you know. And so I wouldn't want it from an abusive state, like how I had to kind of deal with it and kind of suffer through those things at times. So kind of staying away from that and really being able to use that force when necessary, but not it being the first option to getting the point across. So I would want to stay away from that, you know, and just really make sure that they still feel safe, even though you might be in trouble. But let's have conversations and stuff first before it even escalates to that point. So that's another thing. And just I'm not a big gossiper. You know, I felt like I always knew some stuff in the church that I probably didn't need to know. So gossiping is something where I just I know it sounds so weird, but I don't got time to be in here talking about who who messing with who in the small group, or who doing this and who doing that, and who has a drinking problem, or who keep be smoking weed on the corner like we saw over there. They was hitting that joint the other. I don't want to get into all that. That's just not me. I'd rather make sure that whoever in my relationship with, we ain't got to be sitting around doing all that. We could grow together at the end of the day. So
Mhm.
those are some things. How about you? I'm gonna toss it back at you.
For me as a church parent, I have some good nuggets. Like my parents exposed me to a lot of things. So just the habit of going to church, a habit of really reading my Bible and getting an understanding. That's one thing I do with the kids. So outside of church, we have Bible study at home. And I'll allow them to, pick their own chapter and then come back and they tell me what it meant. Like tell me what they got from that chapter to see how they're capable of edifying the word on their level. And I sit and have
Hmm.
conversations with them that I was like, the same, chapter and verse that you read today, 5 years from now, God might give you a different revelation. And I want them to understand that the word is, it's alive. So that's one thing that I've kept with me. My dad did a really good job at making the Bible fun. A lot of people read the Bible and they get bored. But when you talk about, the gossiping and the drama, like the Bible is full of gossiping and drama. Okay. It is like, it is hot tea. What are you talking about? So I try to make it fun for my kids because it literally is. I mean, if you read it, can from A to Z, everything is in there. So especially when you get into
Yeah,
Lot and then what happened after the salt situation. Okay, so um,
yeah. It's a lot of drama in the Bible, y'all. So
it's
you want a soap opera, just read the Bible.
just read the Bible and you can literally apply it. So, teaching my kids how to apply it to an era where they are living and growing and building that habit for them to be able to do it themselves. Like yesterday, my son came to me and he was like, yeah, TD Jake said such and such and such. I think that was really good what he was saying. And he was actually breaking down what TD Jake said from the sermon yesterday. And it's not anything that I asked for him to do. It was just something that was on his heart to do. And my goal as a church mom is for my kids to have a heart for God that is built not on indoctrination, but on relationship. So I'm really big on preaching to them about relationship. I'm really big on them on talking about the failures in the Bible. There's so many failures in the Bible, but somehow they're glossed over still. It makes no sense to me that people read the Bible and they think their life is supposed to be sunshine, unicorns, and just, I don't know, roses. It's very weird to me. So I teach my kids about the pain, the suffering that we have to do as Christians. I teach them that. So when life gets hard, and it will get hard for them, and I'm reminded that even when I was a kid, I've always dealt with something on every level of my life. So I teach my kids that even though they're kids, I know they're dealing with something, but God still will do it for them. No, they don't have to get older to start depending and leaning on God. So that's, definitely something that has stayed with me in the church. And I think to a fault, Tim, because my daughter, she calls me perfect. And she tells me I don't understand. She's like, "Oh, you're perfect. You like she treat me like I'm super saved. You're just perfect. You just don't understand." And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I'll take it as a good thing because that means that I'm walking upright. And when the Bible talks about being a virtuous woman, it makes me feel good, but it's also a very heavy mantle to hold. So being able to walk the straight and narrow, and for my kids to be able to say that I'm being perfected in Christ in such a way where they see Him, because I know I'm not perfect, so they got to see the one that's in me. So being able to live out that thing where when they look at me, they know that I can get a word through to God. And if I can do it, they can do it. So I just try to be a living example for my kids. I don't just want to, pinpoint them or show them who God is. I want them to know that God can reside in us. And no matter what we experience, we'll make it all right. So that's definitely what I'm attempting to do in this journey. It is not easy. It is very hard. It's very challenging. Being a parent, being a human is already hard, but having somebody look up to you and you want to show them and expose them to who God is, it starts with your walk. It starts with our walk. And if you're not doing it right, it doesn't matter about the church hurt anymore. It's about the parent hurt at this point. It's about what's happening in the home. And you'll hear a lot of stories of people be like, well, you're this in the church. A lot of church kids who have parents that are ministers. And you're like, well, you do more for the church than you do at home. And I never want to be, that type of individual. I want to, the church starts at home. And as long as we start to unpack that and understand that the church starts with family, like everything that God told us about, and even in becoming one, it starts with us, the direction and being able to be led. It all starts at home. So I just want to make sure that my kids are exposed to that. And it starts with how I live my life before I even get to the four walls of the church. It starts here.
It starts at home. It starts at home. I couldn't agree more. It definitely starts at home on how you conduct yourself as a Christian woman, how I conduct myself as a Christian man. It does start at home. It's a blessing to hear, like, especially our kids, when they tell us how they look up to us, and it is we're true living examples of God's love, God's grace, God's mercy for us. Um, all of those things come into play. So it's just a blessing to hear that, your daughter just thinks you're perfect, thinks the world of you through the pain, through the suffering. Because you're absolutely right. There's so many stories in the Bible that I'm even still learning to this day. So many stories of failure, pain, struggle, of sadness and suffering that would blow our minds if we really could understand or live in those dark times. And so we have to count everything joy. And so being a parent is very rewarding when you hear your son wants to fast, or he asks you to fast with him. It's a blessing when you see your daughter, write you letters and put God into it, or just different things that you see your kids really wanting to be a part of church, or I want to get a Bible, I want to study the Bible. It's a beautiful thing. And so we got to check ourselves as parents first on where our walk is, how God is using us and leading us so that we can be the best mothers and fathers that we can be. We can also we can use a lot of the pain, some of the gaslighting that we experienced as kids, with our flawed but loving parents, our flawed but loving parents. And as much as we focus on the flaws, we can't allow the flaws to overtake all the great things that they've done for us. And that's how we want to be remembered as parents. So we got to remember our parents as that as well. And just like how God gives us new mercies every day, it's a thing that we got to learn to start doing as well. And saying, yeah, we didn't get this, or we didn't get this, but you did good with what you had. So thank you for giving me what you had, good, bad, and different. And now it's my job to make sure that whatever the bad is, weed it out for the kids' sake, so that I'm not messing these kids up with that. But it's my job to take that out. Whatever was brought down to me, God, remove that generational curse out of here. If that person was just passing on what they had. It's just been a cycle of passing everything on, you know. So God, remove this from me, so it don't even touch my kids at the end of the day. So just hearing this and just understanding just the overall process is it is still a process, but it's a beautiful process at the end of the day. So I think it's great.
Yeah. I think the last thing I want to say, Tim, is just one, piggybacking on you said, like we appreciate our parents for doing the best that they could with what they had. And now we do the best with what we have. And it's so important and imperative. When you spoke on generational curses, I wanted to say, like, we can be so consumed with what was passed to us that we forget that we can start to create curses as well with our mistakes. Okay. So just be mindful of those kinds of things. You know, when you're breaking up your home, if molestation is in your home, if there's abuse is in your home, like all manners of things, poor finance, not managing your finances, like all of these things, we can sometimes get very consumed on what we didn't get from our parents and what they made us struggle with and all of those things. But it's important when you become of age. The Bible says when you were young, you thought as a child, but now you're older. Okay. So now when you're walking into the fullness of yourself and you're getting into a maturity in Christ, please be mindful of the things that you're doing in your walk. And if you are not your walk is not lined up to the word, be mindful that you could be ushering in new curses to your kids. So we have to, with full heart, consider that as well when we're walking this thing out. And I was talking to someone, and they were like, "Well, why? That's just too much responsibility. You trying to tell me if I mess up, then my kids might have to deal with the same thing?" Absolutely. We're still dealing with the sins of Adam and Eve today. We're still dealing with that sin. So when you think about the weight of sin, the wages of it can be passed to your lineage. So we have to take our walk, a little bit more serious. And then it doesn't matter if you're older, younger, like wherever you are, take this God thing serious. Take your walk serious, so that when you do have kids, or as you are having kids, they can see you and they don't have to worry about what you had to worry about. If you love them, that's the best thing you could do. The best thing you can do is live for God, point blank and period. But the second best thing you can do is to be an example of what living for God looks like, so they can model that. Paul says, "Follow me as I follow Christ." That's what you want your kids to do. All right, I'm gonna close it because I'm about to preach.
Uh, all right, all right. Well, so we at the end of the segment. So final thoughts. We're gonna talk about a few final thoughts. So overall, I think it was just a great conversation. We were able to talk through, some of the cause and effect of, our parents, the things that they passed down to us, the experiences that they have, encountered with us, and the things that they've instilled in us as well. So, there's so many good things to look forward to, especially if you have parents that are trying. It's a beautiful thing, even when they're flawed. And so I leave to you one thing about grace. We got to give parents grace. We have to also understand boundaries with parents, especially when it comes to relationships. So love your parents, but also understand whatever boundaries you have to put up to preserve your peace. But continue to love them best way you know how, and the best way God gives you. Those are my thoughts. What you think?
Final thoughts for me, as church parents, be reminded that you are the minister of your home. Okay? And in order to be a good minister, is to show your kids how to walk this thing out. Walk through life. Don't leave them out in the world without the tools to be able to walk this thing out. That's the best thing that I could say as a church parent. And we give our parents grace because we want grace. we want grace, so we have to, give grace because we want it. And we have to understand that although we are being perfected, we're not perfect yet. Hopefully we can get to a place where we ain't got no more spots and we're completely clean. But as we're walking this thing out to be perfected, just be mindful of who's looking at you as you're walking this thing out, as you're making those decisions that may not be in the best interest for your soul or for your kid's soul. But that's it.
Love it. I love it. I love being on here with Tam. She's amazing. Just always drops so many gems for the audience and the group. So, Tam, you are amazing. Thank you so much for being a great co-host tonight. Thank you so much for your insight and everything. So, thank you, sis. Appreciate you. And we just hope that you definitely got something great from Tim and Tam Talks podcast. We're talking church boy with childhood trauma, but tonight we definitely touched on church parents and church kids. So we hope that you caught something great. We thank you so much just for joining us. Be sure to subscribe on YouTube as well as follow us on all of the social media platforms. We keep talking about Instagram, Facebook, you name it, Twitter, you name it. We all everywhere. So definitely follow us wherever you see fit. From that, my name is Tim Nicholas.
I'm
Tam
Tam.
Watts. Yes. God bless you.
We'll
As
see
a smile
y'all.
upon you. See y'all tomorrow, 8:30 p.m. Central, baby.
Bye.